opened up California Design Center and invited everyone here today to host us. I'm going to be talking a little bit about, again, Tucson's new luxury frontier. There's a whole new world south of the border, and it opens up a lot of questions about investment, law, how does it work, how do you make it happen. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I look at the Southwest, the sea areas, how it all comes together, and why I'm here today. So, I'm guessing that just about everybody here is a full-time or at least snowbird resident of Tucson, Arizona. Is that right? And you guys live in an absolute paradise. I was looking at the mountains across the way. You guys have a gorgeous city, golf courses, mountains just north to go skiing, metropolitan Phoenix and Scottsdale just down the road, and weather that you can't beat. And in Arizona, the rest of the country started to realize this and move down here in big numbers. The population in the state is booming, and despite the little recent setback, demographics indicate that that's going to rebound and keep on booming, and it's not going to end for many, many years. And so the question is, you guys have it all, but you're missing one thing. And this is a joke my mother used to tell me when I was little. She was from Southern California, and anytime I came back with a fantastic story and said, "Mom, Timmy says that he's got a space machine in his garage. His dad built him a space machine. Why don't we have one?" And she laughed and said, if you believe that, I got some beachfront property in Arizona to sell you. Now, Arizona has everything except for the beachfront. And recently, just over the past 10 to 15 years, this has changed. And a whole new frontier is opening up on the Sea of Cortez coast and for other parts on the Baja Peninsula. And with these new opportunities, new questions arise, and I want to take everybody through that. Before, we had Mexico, people looking for that dream lifestyle on the beach, that's something to add to their family. Went all the way to San Diego, or flew to Acapulco, Cancun, Cabo San Lucas, Puerto Vallarta, these famous, typical epic Mexican names, but now adding to this list increasingly is Puerto Penasco. And I think that over the next 10 years, you guys are going to see this be listed as one of the top 5 resorts in Mexico and one of the biggest resorts for Americans. They happen to be right next to Arizona, and that gives everybody here a head start. This little town, Little Rocky Point, where a lot of people used to drive up on the beach with their RVs and camp, has gone overnight into an international resort. This is a picture from 1998, empty sandy beach. And this is 2006. There are actually 2 buildings that have been added since this picture was taken. So an empty beach in 8 years went to this, and it's continuing to grow. All of a sudden you have golf, scuba, dining, spas, fishing, boat cruises, resort amenities. And in 2006, Puerto Penasco was actually 3rd among all Mexican destinations in the value of monthly sales. You'd never expect a city like that to be up along the leaderboard. And the question is, how did it happen? Well, privileged location. You're actually talking about an area that you can drive to from a significant amount of the U.S. Southwest. There are 10 million people within a short 4 or 5 hour drive, and over 30 million people within a 7-hour drive. That's fantastic demographics. And then, what people usually don't talk about is the technology revolution. It used to be that going out of town was a hassle and going out of the country was absolutely impossible. And just in the last 15 years, everything has changed. Puerto Penasco, like most places around the world, have every bit as good an internet as the U.S. It's one of the areas where the United States really isn't a leader. So you can get high-quality DSL all over the world. And just across the border in Puerto Penasco, you have DSL. What does that mean? Well, now with Vonage and other voice-over IP phones, that means that you have a U.S. telephone with a U.S. area code. You can fax, you have email, all the things that keep us connected in communication. For the sports fans or the soap opera fans or anything like that, Dish TV and Direct TV, they work just as well over there. So all of a sudden you have a seamless lifestyle across borders. And that's changed everything, where you can go out of town. I'm an attorney. I can bill my time. I can work. I can be every bit as productive when I'm in Mexico as when I'm here, as when I'm on the road or back in Washington, D.C. And so those barriers breaking down have changed the perception, the ability to integrate a foreign country into your lifestyle. And with this location and the U.S. housing boom, where a lot of people were nice enough to take equity out of their homes up here or take their gains and invest in that new lifestyle, that's where you get that overnight. That's where you get that 0 to 60, 8 years, and Puerto Penasco is an international resort already and just growing. So this gives you an idea of what we're talking about. 7 hours, 4.5 hours, 3.5 hours, a huge speck of population. And I'm not even mentioning the people in Tijuana, Mexicali, San Luis, Hermosillo, and further afield, places like El Paso and Juarez, the big populations that are coming to Puerto Penasco. And as I was talking about earlier, it's part of a bigger demographic trend. 76 million baby boomers going to be retiring over the next 15, 20 years. Plus, you have all the different people who are moving into the Southwest to enjoy this beautiful weather and beautiful lifestyle. And Southern California is pretty much developed on the beachfront and out of the price point of all but the wealthiest. And that's really going to point people towards this new frontier in the Sea of Cortez and the Baja Peninsula. The fundamentals are fantastic. And this is something that you're going to see growing over the next 20, 30 years. And probably something that's going to be recovering a lot quicker than the U.S. economy and the U.S. housing market. So Mexican beachfront is a good long-term investment play, and that's great for Arizonans. Now, how do you do it? That's the big question. Everybody knows how to go to a realtor, get your title agency here, you have a property, you're done, you're good to go, and you move on. It's something that people go through every day. Well, thousands of Arizonans and Californians and people from all over the U.S. have bought property in Mexico and in Puerto Penasco just over the last 10, 15 years. So let's get some of the myths out of the way. Americans can't own property in Mexico. It's not a lease. That is an urban legend. And for any of your friends who tell you, no, I got a buddy who knows, they don't know. It's an urban legend. There is a great regime, and I'm going to go over it right now. The rules are well established. Thousands of people who live next door to you and around your city have already bought down there. And some of the largest institutions, banking and otherwise, title insurance, have invested into the system. It's stable, and it's going to be there for a long time. So how does it work? Well, traditionally, there was a part of the Mexican Constitution, Article 27, that said that no foreign citizen can own land in Mexico within 100 kilometers of the coast or 50 kilometers of the border. And that meant that a place like Puerto Penasco was a place where an American just couldn't own with any sort of security. So you had people who made foolish deals on cocktail napkins. You had people who found that Mexican friend to hold the title for him. You had people who found a Mexican relative. But otherwise, people were kind of sticking your necks out. And when NAFTA was negotiated, Canada, U.S., and they brought in Mexico in the early 90s, when NAFTA was negotiated, one of the things that Mexico did to catch up on their investment commitments was pass the Foreign Investment Law of 1993. And that instituted a stable and recognizable system of bank trust ownership for foreign citizens so they could come in and invest in the coast. And that's how they got around it. I'm sure many of you have investment properties in 401ks or maybe even rental or other properties in college funds or things for kids. And it's the exact same thing, where you own the property, but you own it through that bank account. And the bank